Welcome to Better Podcast. It's always an awkward start to this podcast for me because I'm pressing record on Zoom and the lady's voice comes up saying that it's recording, and I wait to hear her voice, but I think the recording actually starts before her voice, and so that's why I'm awkward at the beginning of every one of these episodes. Anyway, welcome to the Better to Better podcast. This episode is about preparing to date in the winter slash during the holidays. Some months ago, there was a preparing to date in the fall slash back to school time for moms. Now this is preparing to date in the winter slash during the holidays as a mom. And so I want to talk about things to consider. But before we get into that, I want to remind you of things you can be doing to help your dating journey. You can join my email list. Go to coachtracy.life. That's my website, coachtracie.life. And you can join my email list. By the time you hear this episode, there should be the Date Better mini manual should be available, and therefore you should be able to get that when you sign up. Also subscribe on YouTube and watch this and listen to this podcast on YouTube and or any of your favorite podcast platforms. Also follow on there and send the podcast to those who you feel it can help. Also be prepared for the fact that I'm launching the Date Better program in January. There will be more information to continue to come on that. There is at the time that you hear this episode, it will be the end of November. Therefore, the the free Date Better webinar will be coming up in December. So be prepared to register for that once that's available so that we can discuss dating and get into that and prepare for the launch of the Date Better program. If you are a mom who is or is looking to date effectively, efficiently, and enjoyably, then the Date Better program is definitely for you. And so I highly recommend you start preparing yourself mentally, financially for the investment of time, money, and energy for the Date Better program, which is going to be an 8-week program in which we meet 1 hour a week as a group virtually. And you will get a digital Date Better course that you get to work through and move through on your own. It's like a textbook for dating. And you will get access to a members only community of other moms who are in the Date Better program. So stay tuned for more on that. Back to the episode, preparing to date in the winter slash holidays as a mom. So it's kind of pretty much a revamping of some of the things you would do in that's the spring. What I mean is it's like flipping some of those things. Like I always talk about being date ready, right? So having like at least 5 outfits that you can just rotate for all of your dates so that you don't have to think hard at all about what to wear. The same concept would apply for hair and makeup. So there's like your spring version of that or spring and summer version of that. You could think of there's going to be a winter version of that as well. So let's start with that. Revamp your outfit rotation. Find 5 go-to winter outfits, depending on the climate that in which you live. That will be your easy to pull out and pick out outfits. There should be very little thought about what you're going to wear on like first and second dates, because again, most dates will be first or second dates. Most dates are not going to go on 3, 4, 5, 6 dates. Um, so it's pretty easy to just rotate the outfits. This person that you meet one time won't see you in another outfit, blah, 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 whatever. So pick them out. Say, how do I want to look when I go out on dates? Also do the same thing for your makeup. Are there colors that are you going to change the color palette because it's winter? Are you changing something about your hair? But already have your ability to get right into the thing and do those things to check those off the list when it comes to dating, because you're intentionally dating, you're consistently dating, you're out here dating potentially like it's a part-time job, right? And so you want to just be able to easily get to it, right? The other thing is identify indoor spaces for you to frequent, because again, if you live in a cold climate, or there's going to be snow or things like that, um, dating in the cold weather can sometimes limit our options of activities and things to do. And so it's helpful for you to already have in mind the restaurants or coffee shops or uh activities you're going to want to do, and knowing identifying where those places are, so it's just less effort in coming up with things to do. Meaning, like, if someone invites you out on the date and they're curious about where you might like to go, you want to already know that and not have to think too hard about, "Oh, well, what activity we're going to do," because in the spring and summer there's more outdoor opportunities. We could take a walk in the park. We can go to do this we go to this rooftop or this outdoor thing in ways that, depending on the climate you're in, you may not be able to do. So it sometimes can limit those things. So you want to be looking at what are indoor things that I can do or that I want to do. Like I always talk about having just a general list, and this goes into this idea of living a full life some episodes ago, right? Where just have a list of things you want to experience just because of your for your entertainment and enjoyment and due to your curiosity, right? And if you have that list of places you want to go, things you want to try, then it makes it easy to offer those up as date options. So what you want to be doing is now thinking wintertime, and if that changes anything about where you would frequent based on the climate you're in, then you want to already identify those places. Um, you want to set realistic expectations about dating in the winter. Again, particularly if you're in a place where the climate really changes, then there is going to be a natural ebbing of dating activity because of the holidays, because of the cold weather, because of travel, stuff like that. And I think about it's like the analogy I always use where dating is romantic interviewing, right? You are the HR manager of your romantic life. You do the interviewing of people to see who you want to hire for the position of romantic partner in your life. Well, just like with hiring, during the holidays, it tends to take a dip in terms of companies hiring new people because of the holidays, all the breaks. It takes longer to process applications and all of that because people have time off. Similar with dating, it there tend to be bigger gaps. Like you might meet someone on an app or meet them in person and want to set up a first date, or maybe you got a first date and you want to set up the next one, but there's pauses because oh, I'm traveling to wherever for the holidays, or oh, I have this, these plans, so I'm not as available, right? Prepare for that. Expect that to be um likely, so that one, you can manage any disappointment that you may feel if you're not getting as much engagement from people, but also so that you can be intentional about taking advantage of the times and the opportunities that you have to meet people. Which brings me to my next point, which is be intentional about your schedule, which really you always should be, right? Especially when we're talking about trying to make time for dating, but be particularly aware for the next few months, like November, December, January, in which you may need to schedule around different events you have going on, different, whether you're hosting events or going to events or traveling. If you're wanting to still date well during the holidays, you're going to want to be mindful of that and pay attention to that. This episode will be coming out a couple of days before Thanksgiving. And a day that I think is great for dating is Thanksgiving Eve. Oftentimes people have that day off and definitely the next day off because it's Thanksgiving. So it can be fun to like go out on that day and that evening to meet people, to talk to people, whether it's romantically or just socially. I remember a couple of years ago when I moved to a new town, I very intentionally went out to um, this restaurant I hadn't tried. That's a really social space because it's a beer garden, so it's outdoors. And I was like, I'm just gonna go meet some new people, and it's Thanksgiving Eve, and I don't have to work the next day. I'm not hosting the next day, so let me go and do it. And I met some really cool people who I continue to keep up relationships with. Um, that's a prime opportunity. So lean into something like that, even if, or maybe especially if you're traveling for Thanksgiving. So what I mean is you may be in a place that's not your home, and that's a great opportunity to just go out and meet people. I always love the idea of practicing engaging with others in places that you don't live because the stakes are low. You're not going to see these people again. And so shoot your shot, but also just chat people up, compliment them, talk to them, try out some things that maybe you're not as comfortable doing in your home base because the stakes are a little higher in terms of if you might, run into some of these people again. But when you are traveling, that is a perfect time to practice these skills. So lean into that. What are going to be your plans Thanksgiving Eve to go out and have a good time, whether it's by yourself or with friends or with family? Your group of cousins are visiting and you go out and do something, right? So prepare in those ways. And then some winter dating pitfalls to be wary of or to be aware of and try to avoid. So I was just on Instagram and Clea Trappa, she had a video about be like pretty much I'm saying beware of hobosexuals. So the men who just, go looking for a place to stay during the winter time because it's cold and they maybe don't have the most secure housing themselves or warmth and such. and be careful that you don't have some man who ends up sleeping in your bed out of convenience for him, because he comes over one day, one night, and never leaves. These are things to be aware of during the holidays. Like, be scanning for the guys who are trying to just move a little too quickly and too easily into your space. And, maybe they weren't as interested in that when the weather is warmer. And once the weather starts warming up, they suddenly become a little more scarce or aren't giving you the input and attention that you were getting before, right? So this is for you to be mindful, right? Because this is where your vetting skills come into play, vetting them out and pretty efficiently and quickly when you're realizing, that's no those boundaries, which of course brings me to why when we're doing our initial few dates with someone, it's outside of the house for multiple reasons, for safety reasons, for setting the tone and the boundaries of the relationship. If you're wanting to engage in serious relationships, committed relationships, we're going to meet outside. We're going to meet outside for a little while, and let's not get too comfortable indoors, whether in my place or your place. So beware of the hobosexuals. Also, beware of neglecting your fitness and healthy nutrition behavior or healthy eating behavior during the winter, because um, that can be easy to do. I know for me, when I was in a phase in my life where I would go to the gym to work out, it was like it became inevitable that I would slack significantly on getting to the gym in the wintertime because of the cold, which ultimately helped me realize I'm not really a gym girl, because I could do great during warm weather with being consistent with that, but then I would like do horrible with being consistent in the winter. But be aware of the fact that there might be things that logistically get in the way of you working out and things like that. So what you want to do is prepare in advance of what your workouts are going to look like when the weather changes. If you were someone who would walk and run outside, or if you were someone who has to leave your house to get to your workout place of choice, and if you realize that that's going to be thwarted by the cold weather, you want to prepare in advance. Am I going to start doing some at home workouts? How am I preparing to keep up with my fitness, my nutritional goals, and things like that during the wintertime? You got to think ahead. And in terms of thinking ahead, let's think about our mental health. As a therapist, I'm always having this conversation with my clients every year around this time, and I predict with significant accuracy how people's mental health may decline during these cold months. Again, depending on the climate you're in, because we are just not likely to get as much sunlight and get vitamin D because we don't want to be out in the cold, right? So, vitamin D and your B vitamins impact your mood, your nervous system. So, anxiety, depression, all of that sort of stuff. So, what I am saying is in your dating journey, in your dating process, think about how that impacts your motivation to date, to meet people, to engage with people. That is impacted by your mood and how you're feeling, right? So let's be proactive. Make sure you aren't deficient in vitamin D or B vitamins. Get those supplements and the food that is needed to up those levels. If you find out that you are low in those, consider light therapy, and see if that helps you or works for you. But also be just very intentional about getting outside in the sunshine for 10 minutes a day or so. Um, so that you can get the vitamin D that we need. But this all takes intentional uh, forethought. Also, just thinking of other things that help keep your mental health in a good place. And that is identifying those things for you. It's self care. It's, first of all, it's the 5 basic areas of self care that every human needs in order to thrive, which is sleeping, good nutrition, body movement, social connection, and boundary setting. But also, should you be, leaning into certain books that you want to read or journaling? Like, look at that self care activities list, the one that we all have that, right? So what I'm saying is, like, I talk about this all the time about making a self care list, knowing what self care is for you, which, by the way, is so hard for moms in particular. You ask a lot of moms, like, okay, what brings you peace, joy, or excitement? Or I never get to do the things that bring that to me. Fair, but I still want you to identify what those things would be, because that's the type of stuff you need to be leaning into to help keep your mental health well, during the winter, where a lot of us can just very naturally have a decline in mood, um, seasonal affective disorder, things like that. So be aware of these things. This was just kind of a quick rundown. I'm sure there are more that kind of pop up here and there, but this is like your just little seasonal check-in of like, all right, here are things you can do to like readjust for dating during this time period. And funny enough, that likely the next episode after this is going to be one about the benefits of taking a date or taking a break from dating, because there are benefits there. And I'm doing that episode after this one because I feel like there's a natural um flow to the fact that a lot of times breaks from dating do happen during this time. So we'll get into that because maybe you may be coming to the determination that a break is good for you. And I think that can be wonderful. And I want to talk about finding that balance between just like giving up on dating versus knowing when it is a good time for you to take a break. So we'll talk about that next week.